Pi is 3.14159265, but you came here for Pocket Ronnie, so please stay tuned.
Okay, in this lesson we're going to work on using your calculator for all these trig functions. And if you look at your calculator, you'll notice you only have sine, cosine, and tangent on your calculator. Because since secant, cosecant, and cotangent are reciprocals of those, you just need to be able to find sine, cosine, and tangent, because then you can find the reciprocal in your calculator. You don't need a secant, cosecant, cotangent button. Okay, so looking at 5b5, we're doing the cosine of 58 degrees. So for this video, I'm going to be using the TI 30X2S calculator. Your calculator might be slightly different, so I'm just going to go through how to do some of these things on this calculator. So for this particular calculator, to do cosine of 58 degrees, you have to hit your cosine button first. Then you hit 58 degrees, and then you can just hit enter. And the instructions, always read the instructions above your problems. The instructions say to do it to 4 decimal places. So once you do your cosine of 58 in your calculator, and your calculator, maybe you have to hit the 58 degrees first, 58 first, then hit a cosine button. But for this calculator, cosine button first, then 58, then enter. And to 4 decimal places rounding it, cosine of 58 degrees is 0.5299. Okay, now we're doing 5b6, tangent of 77 degrees. So same thing, but now we're doing tangent, so you need to be hitting your tangent button. So you should hit tangent button first for most calculators, then 77 for your degrees. You don't have to do the degree symbol, and then hit enter, and then you're rounding it to 4 decimal places. So in my calculator, I have 4.3315 if I'm rounding to the 4th decimal place. So 4.3315. Another side note, cosine and sine will always be numbers less than 1. Tangent can have numbers greater than 1 when you find your trig decimal when you're given the degree. Okay, now we're going to look at 5b9. Now we are doing the arc sine, which what that means is that's going backwards. We are given the 4 decimal places and we are wanting the degrees. So when you're given the decimals and you want the degrees, you're finding the arc sine or the inverse of sine. So you might see the button on your calculator. If you look, you'll have the sine button on your calculator, and then right above that you might see sine to the -1. Or you might see on my calculator it says A sine, which this means arc sine. This is just sine. A sine means arc sine. This also means inverse of sine. So inverse of sine is the same thing as doing the arc sine. So on your calculator, you'll have to use your second button. So here's my sine button, but up above is the sine to the -1, which is the inverse of sine. So I needed the second button to do my inverse of sine. It shows me on my calculator I'm doing the inverse of sine to the arc sine. Now put in your decimals, 0.8746, and now you should be able to hit enter. And so for this particular problem, the instructions say round to the nearest whole number. So I got 60.997. So I can round to 61 degrees. And remember, what we're finding is the angle. When you're given the decimal, you are trying to find the angle. So here we need to have our units, our degree symbol for our angle. And we're rounding to the nearest whole number. Okay, looking at 5b11, we're doing arc tangent or the inverse tangent of 1.1918. So we want the arc tangent or inverse tangent. So here's my tangent button. The inverse tangent is above that, which means I have to use the second button. So second, and then inverse of tangent, and it shows you on your calculator 1.1918. Enter, and then rounding to the nearest whole number would be 50, because I have 50.00. So rounding to the whole number, 50, and that's an angle. We're finding the angle. When you're given the decimal and you're doing the arc tangent, what you're finding is the angle, so the unit is degrees. Okay, now we're looking at 5B22. We're doing the same thing, but the instructions say round to the nearest hundredth, which is 2 decimal places. So we want to do the arc cosine, so of 0.9722. So arc cosine, I'm doing the inverse of sine. So I'll do my second button and then cosine of 0.9722. Now I should hit enter, and I'm rounding to 2 decimal places because they are asking to the hundredth place. So at 13.541, so I can round to 13.54 degrees. Remember, when you're given the decimal and you're doing the inverse of the trig, you will be finding the angle, the degrees. Okay, looking at 5B23, we're doing the arc tangent of this decimal. I'm missing a decimal place. This would be another 3, because you should have 4 decimal places there. 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay, so arc tangent of that. So again, you're using your second button because I don't want just tangent, I want the inverse tangent, which is right up above there. So second, and then your tangent button, which I'm finding the inverse tangent of 3.3333. Now I can hit enter. 73.300, so rounding to just 2 decimal places would be 73.30 degrees. So 73.30 degrees. So that's how you use your sine, cosine, tangent button, and then also the inverse, which is the arc, sine, arc, cosine, arc, tangent.